Related to what we do at Yelp when things go a bit not the way they should go with some of our employees' machines and so on. So a couple of words about me. I joined the Yelp security team in July 2014. Since then, I've been mostly involved in malware incident response, or also working on automation, some of our security processes, tools related to that. Prior, I was working at the research, security and trust group in SAP in Sophia Antipolis in France. And before that, I was at the university doing masters in computer science at the JH University of Science and Technology in Krakow, Poland, where I'm originally from. And then I moved to France for another year. Couple of words about Yelp. I guess probably most of you know about it if you're around here for a while. So we do connect people with great local businesses. That's our main goal. And when it comes to some statistics from the last quarter, that means that we have 86 million unique visitors on our mobile application, 95 million unique reviews, and 70% of our searches come up from mobile. So that's pretty interesting, like to see the growth there. And we're in 32 countries, so it's growing and it's very big already. What it means is we, as a corporation, we have more than 3,000 people, and more than 300 of them are engineers. And yeah, they from time to time they catch something interesting on their machines, either be it something related to that, what they do privately or what they do for their work. So the way we try to fight it is this sort of three pillars of our malware response process. So it comes to detection, where we try basically to see as fast as we can that something went wrong. We have to stop the bleeding immediately. So probably take the machine off the network, try to collect some forensics, and basically do things like reset credentials, all different sort of things that will, let's say, prevent any further possible things that attacker could use if he discovers a vulnerable machine. Then we move to analysis. So with the collected forensics, we try to figure out if this is for real or not. So we have lots of false positives. I'll talk about that later. So we have to figure out if this machine is really infected or not. And the last stage is sort of trying to remediate that. So making sure that something like that cannot occur in the future. And if it occurs, like having less impact on our workforce. So detection. This is something that comes to us from various of different sources. So we obviously have some antiviruses on our employees' machines. We do run other endpoint monitoring software like osquery, which is open source tool from Facebook. We also have a couple of third-party proprietary network traffic monitoring solutions that also alerts from time to time. And we build our own security incident and event management system, which also collects a bunch of different information from us from either this third-party network monitoring tools or other things like osquery into one big data storage. And a couple of alerts are coming just randomly from the employees, either through email or someone just opening help desk ticket. They're usually related to things like phishing. Some employees noticing some random browser toolbars and pop-ups coming on and being quite annoying. So at that point of time, they'll just come to us and say like, "Hey, yeah, there is something weird going with my machine. Can you see what's there?" And obviously, they probably have some malware infection. So the way we deal with all this information coming in is through our automated incident response tool. This is basically trying to make sure that whenever antivirus spots something, we have an actionable means to provide some response for that. So what this automated response tool will do is basically that kind of way to process the information from the central machine that collects all the information from our antiviruses. filter out potential false positives. So we will usually curate something like whitelist of the things that we don't really care about, and they really mean that something is not that interesting, and we should rather concentrate on why did it alert it in the first place. And then try to match a couple of information like IP addresses to employee's office, so we know in which location the user actually is. And later we can have a help desk personnel come and grab the machine, receive the credentials for the users, and basically start the first response. And also for our team, for our malware incident response team, to cut a ticket and make sure to include all the information that we can have there to provide some actionable means to fight what went wrong there. So this is typically how this antivirus alert would look like. A couple of pieces of information there, like file path, which is probably the most important for us, because if we see something like executable on Mac machine, this is not something we really care about in the first place. So we try to weave that out throughout the first response process. osquery is probably some of you heard about it. It's a very interesting project when you can basically query your operating system to similar fashion like you would query a database and ask for instance, kernel extensions installed on the machine, user logins, changes in config file hashes, browser extensions, startup items, launch daemons, and so on. We typically have a central instance where we collect all the information from osquery clients installed on different employees' machines. And we try to analyze incoming data to provide information if something is okay with this machine, if something is not okay, basically to alert us whenever they see some potentially changes that could potentially indicate infection on our machine being found. So we paired it up with another tool that we open sourced, which is called ElastAlert. This is basically to alert out of Elasticsearch data. So basically all of our osquery information goes into central Elasticsearch cluster. And then we try to, using ElastAlert and certain rules there, to alert us whenever there is some match. So for instance, here in this alert, you can see that there was a match with our blacklist, and there is information like path to the file and the user host identifier, which is sort of osquery way to say which machine is it. So this is typically what we do to collect the information from various sources and alert on that. So ElastAlert is open source. If you're more interested in checking out that, there is our GitHub project there. You can also pretty much work on your own rules, like related to either frequency in your data, spikes, some alerts related to flatline, which might be very cool when you want to just check if your system is still alive or not. And it also allows to see changes around certain time frames. So if you have differences between events occurring in a certain time frame, it could alert also on that. Another sort of information that we collect is from our DNS resolvers. This is very cool because it can basically tell us if employee is hitting too much websites that we actually block. It's probable that he's not doing that manually, but rather he has something installed on his machine which is trying to basically request all those websites, and this is probably an indication that there is something wrong going on with the machine. We also use ElastAlert for that. So basically, ElastAlert would query our DNS logs collected in the Elasticsearch instance. So yeah, going to the next step, analysis. As I previously sort of dropped, it's basically a way to figure out whether this infection is actually for real there, and whether where is it actually coming from in the first place. So we may have a couple of just few simple ways to figure out if this is really something interesting for us in the first place, by weeding out the false positives, basically trying to figure out if this is Windows threat on the Mac machine, which we won't really care about, or Mac threat on the Windows machine. These are usually way less than the other way around. And also try to figure out who is it, because from a couple of the alerts, like basically DNS spikes, we may not be entirely sure if this is the right person. We may not have the indication in the alert itself that this is the right machine to take a look at. So we also have to know which machine is it exactly. So going back to our example of the spikes in the DNS block, you may see employee hitting various different websites, but well, there's like I guess around 20 of them here, 20 different lookups. But well, some of them are okay. They are not necessarily work related, like 4chan, for instance, but they do not necessarily indicate that there is already something going wrong with the machine. So we also have to take a closer look at the at few of the domains popping up there. And yeah, we can figure out that, for example, oh yeah, there are 2 of them which actually have some hits on either VirusTotal, things like OpenDNS, Investigator, and thanks to that we figure like actually yeah, there are certain websites that this machine is communicating with that they're not really something we want to be seeing in our network traffic. So we try to correlate that with other information sources that we have at our hand. So we do collect, as I previously mentioned, data from osquery also into our Elasticsearch instance, and basically we can start querying around the machine that caused the DNS spike alert. So we would usually request the osquery data from the particular host, and then we'll have like list of the extensions, all different browser extensions, kernel extensions, bundles installed on this machine, things like changes in the configuration. There is lots of them, so it's quite painful to go through them manually. We usually try to automate that as much as we can, thanks to either having our own blacklist, whitelist to make analysis faster. But eventually, yeah, it comes down to okay, you have potential field of couple of things that are not looking that great. They are not really something typical. And yeah, you may see like, oh yeah, there is this zip cloud, which is in the autostart. And if you go Google around, you can see that, yeah, zip cloud is some malicious Safari extension that just serves you lots of ads. And yeah, this is not something we usually like our employees to see on their machines. So most of our employees use MacBooks, and because of that, we focus really on our analysis on MacBooks and Mac OS X. And basically, a couple of months after I joined, we open sourced a tool called OSXCollector, which is a tool to basically collect the forensics from the machine, and also with a couple of extensions which we call output filters. It's trying to do some automatic analysis out of this collected forensics to highlight what's going wrong there. But typically the original OSXCollector script is just one Python file that you can just drop on infected machine, run it there, and it will collect the forensics for you, pack them into .gz. You can get that back and start the analysis on the machine that's not infected, and basically that analysis will use to figure out what's wrong with the infected machine, potentially infected machine. So the way that OSXCollector gathers all this information is basically by typically doing similar thing to what osquery is also doing. So it will collect a couple of things like kernel extensions, browser extensions, things that are in the downloads directory of the machine, also things like browser history to figure out basically what was the different chain of operations that user has done prior to getting malware on their box, to be sure that we can in the future prevent further alerts like that. All the information that OSXCollector gathers is stored in JSON format, so basically each item, like kernel extension, will have their own JSON object, which will have a couple of common fields like file hashes, file path. Also, for executables, it will be signature chain, so it can be also useful for figuring out whether this is something that's coming from the trusted source, like Apple in this example, or something that's not unsigned. So, typically being well, you cannot whitelist things like that, yeah. And then we start to do automated analysis. So basically, we'll run this output through a couple of the filters, which will collect threat intelligence for us. Like, we will either check it against our internal blacklists, then we'll run it through Shadow Server, which is sort of a way of whitelisting applications. So it basically it stores information about all expected hashes on the healthy operating system. So we can, without already the information that's not so much interesting for the further investigation. Then we will go and collect further forensics, information from APIs like virus.tool. This is giving us information basically about things that are not that great. So it will let us know how many different antiviruses picked up this particular file hash or a domain. And the last one is OpenDNS, which we also use for figuring out what's wrong with a couple of different domains. And also we can automatically try to sort of filter the browser history to see like what happened directly prior to the incident, to be more knowledgeable about the websites he or she visited or different actions the user took. And after that, we have basically the same JSON file that came at the input, but augmented with all this information. So this is typically still lots of information. So there is a way in OSXCollector to basically just provide you with a shorter summary of what happened. And this will basically summarize you all the really bad finds. So it will highlight the applications that were picked by virus.tool. It will highlight some domain from the history, so you can directly see what actually potentially caused the infection. Yeah, OSXCollector is also open source, so if you want to go check it out for yourself, there is our GitHub project there. Also part of OSXCollector that's directly communicating with these different APIs like Shadow Server, virus.tool, and OpenDNS is a separate project that we use in OSXCollector as a library. We call it ThreatIntel. It's basically a way to call all these different APIs from Python. So also if you're planning to extend your tools with this information, you can do it as well. We also see a lot of things reported directly by our employees related to phishing. So this is typically where the user gets email that looks like Dropbox file share, or someone sharing Google Drive, or one of our execs getting like information about, hey, you should transfer me $5 million soon, can you do it? So typically things that usually don't look that secure for us, but well, you never know. Some of them are so elaborate that even, let's say, very experienced user will fall to them. So it's also good to have some other protection measures against that. But what we would do, and typically we'll get things like user reporting to us the email that they get, which they didn't really expect it, saying them to open a document, is we try to investigate where it came from. So for the users that that actually reported to us, which is already great, it's already, I guess, like 90% of the job done, that someone reported in the first place, we try to reward them. So we have this Chompy stickers, which is our mascot, to basically thank them for their effort to keeping the Yelp secure. But the important part of that actually is to have a good employee education program in the first place. So make sure you communicate stuff like what phishing is, what all these different social engineering practices are, so people at all levels in your company don't fall victim to them. What we also did is we basically set up this one email address that all employees know about, that they can forward suspicious emails to. This is quite important because it's good to have this like one source where we know we can respond directly to. If employees report it through help desk, it's always like taking a while. It's taking some time till it reaches us. And yeah, also something like some of the companies are starting offering products like automated email attachment scanning. This is an interesting idea. It has some drawbacks. It has some positive sides as well, but this is something you can do as well on your own. If you want to have more, let's say, automated way of reporting phishing emails rather than relying on employees. But I feel like it's really important to also give power to the users and make sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to reporting different things that may go around in your company. So typically for email we received into this reported to us by employees to this email address, we'll try to analyze some message headers. If there is some attachment, if your email client didn't pick it up in the first place as a virus, we will try to detonate it in our VM. We try to figure out the past user interaction to see if, for instance, it was from their business contact. If it was from their business contact, we will be a bit more careful about not blocking this email sender, because if it was important business contact, if you block it, they won't be able to convey some important business, for example. So it's also important to trying to understand what's the context there. And yeah, important part is also to figure out who has received it, because if there is one employee reporting something but no one else, usually the case is that usually a group of people received the same email, but only one person reported it. Another thing that you can do is go to phishing.com. This is a website that's run by OpenDNS. They basically provide a way to sort of have crowdsourcing database of all different phishing campaigns. So you can also submit your own. You can search what you received if it's already there, and they basically done all this analysis for you. So you don't need to go to all the steps yourself. So yeah, go check it out as well. And remediation. So what we usually do is, well, if something is really infected, we just wipe it. Yeah, there is not much you can do about that. But this is sort of like the last possible way to do it. We try to do some other stuff before that as well. So we'll try to do things like block things at DNS resolution, update our firewall rules. Also trying to go through our indicators of compromises, so all those different blacklists, whitelists that we curate, that OSXCollector is using, to make sure that it's always up to date and there is some information there which is not stale. For phishing campaigns, we usually try to block someone who sent the email address. Also, a good idea is to maybe block the way back, so not make it possible for the employees to send the message back to the phisher. Because yeah, if they receive something like, hey, yeah, can you provide me all this secret information, like the list of your social security number of your employees, yeah, it's also good to prevent the channel back to the phisher. And important thing as well is to communicate back to your employees, especially if it's like larger phishing campaign. You may have some outgoing communication from your team. to say, yeah, you should be aware that there is something like that going on. It also makes a stronger message. It reinforces the messages that they get previously from things like anti-phishing education. So sort of going back through all these three major steps that we do, like detection, analysis, and remediation. In the first phase, we try to gather, well, first collect the alerts from various sources, make them actionable, make sure it's happening fast, that we don't waste time on things like false positives or something like or wrong OS. In analysis, we'll basically, after collecting the forensics, we'll try to correlate the information from various sources that we receive, and also run some automated analysis to make sure that things are repeatable, rather than going one by one with each of the cases that we see. And the remediation will be either wiping the machine if it's really infected, and taking all the results from the analysis and making sure that our tools are getting better and better along the way. So also updating our blacklists, blocking, educating users, things like that. So all the steps that we do, they're sort of not separate. They're not like set in stone. They're not something that we just try to follow, from. Sorry. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Hi. So we've heard a couple people in the back are having a hard time hearing. If you guys are talking a lot and want to talk to your neighbors, it'd be great if you could move to the lounge over there or something, because the people in here really want to hear what's going on. So the people in here, oh, that's better. Wow. Can everyone hear me now? Good. Good. So the people in here want to hear what's going on here. So we've heard that some people in the back can't really hear what's going on. So if you're talking a lot and want to talk, I recommend going to the lounge above or somewhere else, because this is the only place that we can hear this young gentleman here give his presentation, but you can talk with other people anywhere else. Thank you.
Okay. I should have just speak a little louder. That also help. So yeah, as I was mentioning, this is not the process that we sort of try to go from step A to step B. It's not set in stone. It's not something we just like follow without ever giving it another thought. So we also try to make it better along the way. And the way we do it is basically our goal is to try to make the response faster and more accurate. So we aim at reducing the number of false positives that is happening around, either trying to have better tools, basically updating our tools, keeping them fresh, up to date. And whenever we see some repetition, also trying to make sure that it can be automated. So if we are doing something more than twice, 3 times, we'll try to maybe run the script around that. If we see that we use the script a lot, we'll try to make it included into our response process along the way. So for instance, combine it together with our ticketing system and make sure that everyone is using it. So also important part of the whole process is education. Whenever there are any changes along the way, you need to make sure that everyone in your organization is knowledgeable about them, knows how to do it. So also make sure that that there is a knowledge exchange going on around the different parts of the investigation process, to make sure that everyone is familiar with the tools, everyone knows how to use them, and everyone knows how to update them if necessary. And yeah, all those different pieces are coming on around to fine-tune our malware response. So this is pretty much it, what I have for today. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thanks for listening. There's no mic. So the question is like at the beginning how the organization, how big was the organization, and how the process changed along the way. So with Yelp is quite particular that okay, we are growing like year by year. Since I joined, like there is like rapid growth of number of employees, but especially it comes to more like departments like sales, for instance, which are not necessarily tech-savvy people, but we still want to make sure that they're able to use their machines and they're not getting infected. So it's basically trying to make sure that whenever you have that, like this bunch of alerts coming in, to try to respond as fast as you can. And if you see some patterns in the responses, so if you see like this one large campaign affecting most of the users, you should have maybe some targeted response rather than just following this step by step what I mentioned before. Also, what helped us a lot was at the very beginning we didn't have DNS resolution. We were not blocking traffic at the DNS resolution level. This helped us a lot. This basically like cut our commodity malware alerts like more than half, I guess. So that was very helpful. So I would say, like, if you're not doing that yet, you should probably consider it. There was some other question, I think. The question is, what's our network intrusion detection system? I mean, we use a bunch of things that I've mentioned, the combination of the tools I've mentioned. We from the third-party proprietary software, yeah, I'm not so comfortable dropping the names, but we can maybe take it offline if you really wanna hear the let's say the set of tools. Like, I guess the important message is we're not very like we are not married to them. That's my take on that always. So if we see something like certain third-party vendors not giving us what we want and not really, or what they give us in the first place is not really helpful for us and it costs a lot, well, we will just try to evaluate it and we could possibly change it. So it's also, I guess, important aspect to make sure that your tools are quite interoperable. If you need to change them from one third-party vendor to another, like from one network monitoring solution to another, make sure that you keep this sort of interfaces in between, that if any of your tools below will change, all the rest of your stack can still work. Any other questions? There is one. So the question is, how large is our security team? I think we have around 15 people right now, just in the core security team. Some of them are around here, so if you catch any of them, just say hi. And we also have like generally some tech security savvy people in our team, in other teams like operations. Yeah, pretty much like we try to make sure we have connection in each of our teams. So yeah, it's like there is core security team of 15 people, but also like communicating well with other departments. Some other questions? If not, then thanks a lot, and yeah, see you around.